Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail for you today on a cool, overcast day. Not at all the kind of thing I want to see. I was tempted very briefly. We got a few days that were absolutely gorgeous. This kind of a day is gorgeous in its own right, but not if you have a pampered city girl for a dog. I have a pampered city girl for a dog. I don't know if you can see. She's right here with me. she's not going anywhere. She's not in another room just because she still wanted to be here. But when the sun is not out, she just shuts down. She just shuts down completely. And so she doesn't want to go out. She doesn't want to be caught in the rain. I had to ask her several times to go out for our afternoon walk. But there's still mail. There's still mail. And the gigantic blob of atmospheric moisture that looked to me like it was covering all of the middle Midwest and was definitely headed this way is gone today. I don't see any major weather in Boston's immediate future. So clouds and sun, sure. And the temperatures aren't going to get cold. It's just, it feels that way. It feels like a blah day. But there's still mail. And one of the things, the first thing I want to show you, there are no boxes, but the first thing I want to show you is something that was opened off camera. So this is, as one of you put it in appropriately Catholic terms, a sin of omission. This is by an author you're all going to know, Candice Millard, who did River of Doubt and also Destiny of the Republic. Two really good books. And this is her new book, River of the Gods, which is about the search for the source of the Nile. Which is a great story on its own, fantastic story on its own. This is sort of a just bound pages here, so I don't think this has a sheet in it or anything. No, this is just very preliminary. This comes out in late May, and it's going to do, huge business. I'm sure that it is. But we can read from the book here. For millennia, the location of the Nile River's headwaters were shrouded in mystery. In the 19th century, there was a frenzy of interest in ancient Egypt. At the same time, European powers sent off waves of explorers intent to map the unknown corners of the globe and extend their colonial empires. Richard Burton and John Hanning Speke were sent by the Royal Geographical Society to claim the prize for England. Burton spoke 29 languages and was a decorated soldier. He was also mercurial, subtle, and an iconoclastic atheist. Speke was a young aristocrat and former army officer determined to make his mark, passionate about hunting, Burton's opposite in temperament and beliefs. And you can see already what Candice Millard is doing, what she did so well in River of Doubt, and also Destiny of the Republic, which is that she really organizes her stories around personalities, and she does a great job at it. From the start, the two men clashed. They would endure tremendous hardships, illness, and constant setbacks. 2 years in, deep in the African interior, Burton became too sick to press on, but Speke did, and he claimed that he found the source in a great lake that he christened Lake Victoria. When they returned to England, Speke rushed to take credit, disparaging Burton. Burton disputed his claim, and Speke launched another expedition to Africa to prove it. The two became venomous enemies, with the public siding with the more charismatic Burton to Speke's great envy. The day before they were to publicly debate, Speke shot himself. Yet there was a third man on both expeditions, his name obscured by imperial annals, whose exploits were even more extraordinary. This was Sidi Mubarak Bombay, who was enslaved and shipped from his home in East Africa to India. When the man who purchased him died, Bombay made his way to the local sultan's army and eventually traveled back to Africa, where he used his resourcefulness, linguistic prowess, and raw courage to forge a living as a guide. Without his talents, it is likely that neither Englishman would have come close to the headwaters of the Nile or perhaps even survived. In this book, Candice Millard has written another peerless story of courage and adventure set against the backdrop of the race to exploit Africa by the colonial powers. So you can see right away the 21st century shading on that description, right? I forget, was it 100, 200, or 300 times that colonialism was mentioned? Okay, fine. But I'm hoping that the book is far less Twitter. I'm hoping that the book, this is a fantastic adventure story. Just a fantastic adventure story. I'm hoping that the book at least captures a lot of that. There's all sorts of stuff in here that you can read and love in this story. I've read many, many accounts of this story, but of course none that highlight, what was his name again? Sidi Mubarak Bombay. None that highlight him until now. And that's the good side of the 21st century, is that we're finding all of these stories that were just buried so that white Europeans or white Americans could hog the limelight, and those stories are often incredibly fascinating. That's the good side. And the bad side, I'm hoping, Candice Millard has been an author that has pleased me forever. I'm really hoping that it doesn't happen. But the bad side, of course, as you already know, if you spend any kind of time on Twitter, is when a book mentions colonialism over and over again because they really want you to divest your hundreds of thousands of acres of land in Rhodesia. And you read it and you say, well, okay, but I rent an apartment. I don't own hundreds of thousands of acres in Rhodesia, and Rhodesia doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, you would say that. Racist. You just have to hope. You just have to hope that this book embodies the best parts of the 21st century, uncovering all of these great stories that actually were, literally, to use the loaded word, marginalized. That this book does that and doesn't do any of the Twitter sloganeering. It's not an actual train whistle. It is. Oh, my. 7 o'clock in Grover's Corners. Goodness gracious. That was an actual train whistle. Has that ever happened before? Well, we had the mailbag delivered here to the junction. Let's see what else we have now that you've heard that. Got the Sadie Hawkins dance to go to later this weekend. What is this first one? Okay, it was a priority mail envelope, but it has another envelope inside it. What's inside this? Could it be another envelope? Am I going to win the Oscar? Let's see. What is this, baby girl, huh? You curious yourself. What is this? Good Lord. What on earth? Okay, well, I love my job. I never know what I'm going to get. This comes with an actual booklet. I think I'm up to page 10 of the mimeograph sheet, and I think it's 10 pages long. But we're going to try and find an actual pub sheet in all of this. Just that. Okay, there's an interview. There's a long interview. I think this first one is the pub sheet. Odd thing, too. Okay, so this is a novel. It's called Passing Again by Tom LeClaire. And it is, I don't know if you can tell, let's grab our handy-dandy Penguin Anthology of Irish Poetry. See that? It's bigger, and it's as tall as a hardcover, but it's wider than either one. It's a new size on its own, and it has these the French flaps. So I can only assume that this is the version that you would get if you bought this thing. But you can't buy it yet. I don't think this comes out until July. Yeah, this doesn't come out until July. All right, so let's hold this up and feast your eyes on this. It's actually a very good cover design. This is Passing Again by Tom LeClaire, which comes out in early July, the first Tuesday in July. Passing Again is double dealing. A memoir masquerading as a novel, or a novel pretending to be a memoir. Yeah, good for you, Seymour. Nice try. It's either a novel or it's not. Okay. Of the doubles, Tom LeClaire and Michael Keever, former pro basketball player and the putative author of Tom LeClaire's 4 earlier Passing novels. Real author and invented character go on a buddy road trip to Athens, Greece, where both their lives changed decades ago, to recover the past, and to arrange futures of revenge and sex they have concealed from each other. Okay, that took a little bit of a turn. I should have known from the mention of Greece, I swear. Let's see here. But their ulterior purposes are sidetracked in Athens when they discover that a real group influenced by an eco-terrorist made up in Passing Off plots to bring down the Parthenon. Okay, so let's parse this out. So Passing Off was an earlier. There were 4 books previous to this, it looks like, and they're called the Passing Tetralogy, and that now becomes the Passing Pentalogy. And one of those was Passing Off. And in that book, Passing Off, was an invented terrorist group. Only in this book, it turns out that that's real. But is this real? So there are all sorts of postmodern narrative gimmicks going on here. Once a hero in Greece, Keever is convinced by the Philhellene Leclaire to again employ deception to save the monument. Passing Again is appropriately and militantly hybrid, a splicing of old facts and new illusions, a revenge comedy and a love story, Greek travelogue and Socratic dialogue, an archive of autobiographical texts and 50 photos, a literary entertainment, and green vision. Although Passing Again is a standalone work, well, it doesn't sound completely standalone, but maybe the author does a really good job. I mean, he would know. In it, fiction does double other fiction. Life imitates fiction, and life even duplicates life, as this final passing novel proves once again the value of Keever's long-held motto and Leclerc's constant practice. No game, no gain. Okay, I have no idea what this is going to be. I'm totally intrigued. Okay. So this comes out on July 7th. I imagine it's going to look like this. It's coming out as a paperback. Now, there's one last detail here that I'm learning from the... oh, wow, it's on the book as well. There's one last detail that I'm learning from the pub sheet that I want to share with you, because that's what we do, right? We look at new things. This certainly sounds like nothing else I will read this year. I don't think I've read any of the Passing tetralogy, but it doesn't sound like... It sounds like the author is preparing to blow your mind anew in every book, so I might not need to. So you might not need to. And this is, to say the least, going to be distinctive on your bookshelf. There's only one detail that I haven't told you yet, that it's on the pub shade here, and it's actually on the book, so it's not a misprint. This is coming out as a paperback original with the French flaps, and this is $50. The paperback in July is $49. And I imagine that rules it out. Right? I imagine that completely rules it out for 99.9% of anyone who might have been interested in the description that I just read. I imagine that rules it out. Who has $50 to spend on a paperback that's, by its own admission, the fifth in a series? I don't know. I know quite a few wealthy people. I know literally no one in my life would pay that price for this. When you turn to the back of this thing, it should say, what? $16.95, maybe $15.95, something like that. Instead, it's $49. So be aware, as the advisories say, be aware. I don't know how likely a chance you have to convince your library to get this thing, but that's the only way that you're going to get it without paying, an eye tooth. What an interesting way to start off the package. How fascinating. I've got a whole book here of stuff about this that I'll have to read. So put that aside. And move on to the next package. A little bit of a shock. You can stand up again now. I wanted you all to be sitting when you heard how much that cost. But now we'll go back to the relative real world here. Okay, all right. This is a finished copy. I think this might be a double. We've already seen this. I think we've already seen it as a finished copy. No information at all. This is I think an April release. Boy, oh boy. Without the pub sheet, I'm not sure. This could be late March. This is by Anthony Kronman, and it is after Disbelief, on disenchantment, disappointment, eternity, and joy. With the requisite hideous American cover. We'll just read a little bit of this because I don't have a sheet for it. Many people of faith believe the meaning of life depends on our connection to an eternal order of some kind. Atheists deride this belief as a childish superstition. In this wise and profound book, the author offers an alternative to these two entrenched positions, arguing that neither addresses the complexities of the human condition. We can never reach God, as religion promises, but cannot give up on the longing to do so either. We are condemned by our nature to set goals we can neither abandon nor fulfill, yet paradoxically are able to approach more closely if we try. The human condition is one of inevitable disappointment tempered by moments of joy. Resolutely humanistic and theologically inspired, this moving book offers a rational path to the love of God amidst the disenchantment of our time. And I remember having ambivalent feelings toward this thing when we first got it, when we heard about it the first time. Because there's no such thing as eternity, okay? All the dude bros up there love to talk about eternity. What we do now echoes in eternity. They love to talk about eternity. There's no such thing as eternity. There's no such thing as eternity with a capital E. Okay? There's no such thing. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. And we have a relatively accurate estimate of how wide it is. And we're talking about the universe. No matter what the dust jacket goes on about that flapdoodle about the love of God, if you're saying the love of God is eternal, show it to me first. Then we can measure it. Or then I'll take your word for it that it's infinite. But first you have to show it to me. And you can't, and no one ever has been able to show me the love of any God ever in the history of the world. So you can believe that sort of thing, sure, but you can't claim that that represents the eternal. There's no eternal. There's no eternity. There's nothing like that. The universe is the place where we live, and it is discretely old and discretely large. The numbers involved are mind-boggling, but nevertheless, you don't really have a sense of how long 1 billion years is unless you've been married to Deb. Okay. So I haven't read this yet. I read a bit of it the first time we got it, but I haven't got to it yet. I'll have to see what kind of a date it is. Okay, then what I'm saying is you're not reconciling humanistic, and I guess by that cover jacket, humanist is supposed to mean atheist, with Christianity, which I'm sure that's meant to say, because in plenty of religions, gods are finite and die. I'm sure that what's being stood in there is that for humanism, you are to read atheism, and for God, you are to read the Christian God. And you can't reconcile the two of those things in the way that the cover jacket copy is trying to suggest. Because there's no eternal. There's no infinite. The eternal. The ages. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as the ages. There's no such thing as that. Okay? 300,000 years ago, there were no humans on Earth. 300,000 years ago, there were no humans on Earth. And, 4 billion years ago, there was no multicellular life on Earth. So there's no the ages. What Diderot aspirants always get into trouble with is capital letters. That's always what gets them into trouble. There's no such thing as eternity with a capital E. There's no such thing as wisdom with a capital W. There's no such thing as knowledge with a capital K. And most of all, most dangerously of all this, no such thing as truth with a capital T. Well, the minute you introduce the capitals, you become a dude bro and you start to represent a serious danger to legitimate thought. Just if they didn't have the caps lock on their keyboard, most dude bros would be fine. Anyway, let's move on. This next one is wafer thin. I don't know what could be of interest here. Something this small. Oh, got it. Well, it's wafer thin. It's a tiny little package, but you found room for an invoice. What is this? Oh my. Okay. All right. This comes out in August. This comes out in the August 9th. Okay. So this is by Emi Yagi, and it is Diary of a Void, a novel, a little thing. So this is our day for getting oddly shaped things. I'm sure that this hardcover is going to be tiny, just like this thing is. This thing is not a normal-sized hardcover. Well, the problem is, okay, Candace Millard book is a normal-sized, will be a normal-sized hardcover. There you go. So it's tiny. It's a little bit bigger than a paperback, but it's not the full size. So this is, I don't have a pub sheet for this. We'll just read it off the book. Let's see here. This is a prize-winning, thrillingly subversive debut novel. Oh, debut, fantastic. About a woman in Japan who avoids harassment at work by perpetuating for 9 months and beyond the lie that she's pregnant. So she has to pretend she's pregnant to avoid being harassed at work. When 34-year-old, some men I know, that would be a green light right there. When 34-year-old Mrs. Shibata gets a new job in Tokyo to escape sexual harassment at her old one, she finds that, as the only woman in the new workplace, she is expected to do all the menial tasks. One day she announces that she can't clear away her colleagues' dirty cups because she's pregnant and the smell nauseates her. The only thing is, Mrs. Shibata is not pregnant. Now, I wonder, I have heard stories, I'm not going off on an anti-SJW rant here, because I've heard stories that even in 21st century Japan, in Japanese corporate culture, that is absolutely true. And I wonder if any of you have maybe a more direct knowledge of that. I've heard stories that the kind of thing that's being described here on this cover, that people will be in the break room and or in the cafeteria and they'll be eating, and then the men will just leave their crap behind because there's a woman present. So they expect that she will just automatically clean up after them, even if she's got a title in the company masthead, the equal of authority of their own. I have heard stories like that all the time. I've heard lots of stories like that in the 21st century from people who are not trying to score points on one side or another of some ideological debate on Twitter. I've heard all kinds of stories about how even in 2020, when everybody gets to the office, the men expect the woman to make the coffee. They expect the woman to not only make the lunch order, but go and get it. No matter what, there's no side. I've heard stories that there's no talk of taking turns, that it's purely sexist. So I'm wondering about that. But let's see. This actually goes on. Let's see here. Pregnant Ms. Shibata, or I'm sorry, it's not. I kept saying Mrs. Her name is Ms. Shibata. Pregnant Ms. Shibata doesn't have to serve coffee to anyone. Pregnant Ms. Shibata isn't forced to work overtime. Pregnant Ms. Shibata rests, watches TV, takes long baths, and even joins in aerobic classes for expectant mothers. She's finally being treated by her colleagues as more than a hollow core, like the cardboard tubes for paper towel or toilet paper rolls that her company manufactures. But she has a 9-month ruse to keep up. Before long, it becomes all absorbing, and with the help of towel-stuffed shirts and a diary app on which she logs every stage of her quote-unquote pregnancy, the boundary between her lie and her life begins to dissolve. Surreal and absurdist, with a winning matter-of-factness, a light touch, and a refreshing sensitivity to mental health, Diary of a Void will keep you turning the pages to see just how far Ms. Shibata will carry her deception for the sake of women, and especially working mothers, everywhere. Okay, well, is she crusading socially, or does she just like how her life has turned out? The ending threw me for a loop there. Is she a public figure doing this? I don't know, but let's find out about Emi Yagi is an editor at a Japanese women's magazine. She was born in 1988 and lives in Tokyo. And this is her first novel. It won the Dazai Osamu Prize, awarded annually to the best debut work of fiction. Okay, so the one thing that I didn't hear here is whether or not this is translated. It is. It's translated from the Japanese by the team of David Boyd and Lucy North. Diary of a Void, which by a horrific, totally accidental quirk of timing, is coming out on August 9th. Which is an anniversary in America of the bombing of Nagasaki. So, but we're going to try not to think about that. That is a pure coincidence. And notice the cover design. I just noticed the cover design. Look where the circle is on her body. Very good. Very good. All right, so this is going to be a cute little hardcover. What is this going to be? $23. This is going to be $23 in America. So this is going to be $23, and this is going to be $50. And this comes out in August. Well, it sounds fascinating. It sounds terrific. And of course, you already know, I'm a big fan of literature and translation. I read as much of it as is sent to me. And I'm also a huge fan of debut novels. I just love the feeling of encountering an author when all the possibilities are still in the future. When maybe there are some authors who actually need approval, where they actually need that will help them. That will help their creative process. The one dodgy aspect that I have here is my hit or miss relationship with contemporary Japanese fiction, which just as a whole, regardless of the translator, tends to strike me as zombified in a way. The jacket here said matter-of-fact narrative style. A lot of times matter-of-fact is a euphemism for completely listless, and I've never been able to really get my head around that and suspect that it's something being lost in translation. But we shall see. So there you go. We have Passing again, the latest in the Passing pentology. We have After Disbelief. We have Diary of a Void. It's the one I'm most intrigued about, I admit. And River of the Gods by Candice Millar's new book. So a lot of you will know this author already. She's got a new book coming out soon. So there you go. That is the mail for today on a depressingly gray day. I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.